We're live. It's September 1 and have our two co-chairs here, Mayor Hodson from Canby and Commissioner Savas from Clackamas County, and the meeting is yours.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Mayor Hodson, you want to take over?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good evening. Happy September to everybody. I hope everyone had a great August and everyone's still managing to stay cool and get ready for back to school, or if you're back in school, or children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. We're off and running for a great fall. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance here. So Trent, if you do the honors of. Perfect, sir. Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you all. Just kind of checking people off as I see people come on board here. Make sure we got everybody. So moving into introductions, I will just kind of work down the list here. First off, my co-chair partner in crime here, Commissioner Savas.
Good evening, everyone. Paul Savas, Clackamas County Commissioner.
Commissioner Schulz in the house this evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Martin.
Evening, everyone. I'm Martin Myers. I'm the chair of the Redland Viola Fishers Mill CPO and CPO rep to C4. Good evening.
Perfect. Councilor Sherman.
Hello, everybody. Brett Sherman, City Councilor, Happy Valley.
Councilor Heisey.
Councilor Kathy Heisey from City of Milwaukee, also your Mpac representative for Clackamas Cities.
Wonderful. Mr. Marl.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Adam Marl, Oregon City Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Welcome. I didn't see, let's see. I didn't see Mayor Stemple on yet, or Mayor Drinkwine, so I'll keep moving through. Mr. Gornick.
Paul Gornick from Oak Lodge Water Services.
Welcome, sir. Did Miss Pratt sneak in here yet? I don't see her. Okay. Miss French.
Hi, Sherry French, Clackamas River Water.
Perfect. Mr. Gronke.
Ed Gronke, Clackamas Citizen Representative to Mpac.
Wonderful. Welcome, sir. And the illustrious Miss Lewis.
Good evening, Christine Lewis, Metro Council District 2.
Wonderful. And then Mr. Wood from the great city of Canby.
Podwood, Canby Area Transit, representing the small rural transit providers.
Excellent. And I believe I missed Mr. Buck. How could I miss you?
Thanks, Mayor. Joe Buck, Mayor of Lake Oswego.
Wonderful. I think, and then Councilor, is it Ackerval?
It's Ockerval. Kristen Ockerval, Council President, City of Wilsonville, and I'm just sitting in for Mayor Fitzgerald this evening.
Perfect. Well, welcome to this rowdy bunch. I think I got everyone that checked in. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brian Hodson, the mayor of the great city of Canby, and your co-chair for C4. We do have a great agenda this evening, and we do have a special guest. So we will take care of some real quick housekeeping, and that would be approval of C4 minutes for August.
Move approval of the August minutes.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, changes, or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Minutes pass. Thank you very much. Next housekeeping item is the October C4 meeting. Mr. Wilson.
Thanks very much. The October meeting for C4, which would be that first Thursday, is going to be canceled at the recommendation of the C4 Executive Committee. This is primarily because the League of Oregon Cities has a conference that week, and many of y'all will be attending, which is great. We totally support those conferences. Clackamas County will attend the Association of Oregon Counties in November. So that's a great opportunity for y'all to visit there. As a supplement, though, we do strongly encourage that you try to attend the field trip in October, on October 14th, and we'll talk more about that later. That would be a great substitute to get more C4 information, but specifically to the work y'all been talking about related to housing. So we'll talk more about that later after our guest, but for now, the C4 October meeting is canceled.
And Trent, I apologize, I didn't introduce you, but we all know you, we all love you, and we all know that we would not be where we are as a group without your leadership and tutelage. So thank you.
You're too kind. Happy to be here. It's a great team.
And all the magic people behind you that make it happen. Perfect. Well, next on our agenda is the long anticipated conversation and visit with OTC, or the Oregon Transportation Commission Chair. Bob Van Brocklen is joining us this evening, and we're very pleased to have him joining us tonight.
Yes, he's coming in now. And we got a couple folks from ODOT who are also in the audience in case there's a technical question that comes around, but I'm grateful that he was able to join us today.
Great.
Welcome, Chair Van Brocklen.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, we're just getting me pulled in.
No, you're good. Chair Van Brocklen, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've had a great summer and have been keeping busy. We really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and talk with us about the congestion pricing and tolling conversation that's been going on now for a little while. And as you know, Clackamas County and this group in particular have been following this very closely and very passionately. And so I will remind my colleagues and peers here that Mr. Chair Van Brocklen is our guest, so let's make sure that we act accordingly and mind our P's and Q's. For those of you that don't know what that means, that's pints and quarts. If you didn't know that, it's a little trivia for you. So, Mr. Van Brocklen, again, welcome. You have an illustrious career. We appreciate that you do the work that Governor Brown has appointed you to do in terms of chairing the commission. We do. We have some questions. And I think our team here, Trent and his staff, sent some precursory questions to you that we were really hoping to have some dialogue around moving forward. And so I think the big piece is that we want to make sure, one, we have a partnership here in Clackamas County. We're the first ones to be, in essence, kind of the guinea pig for this endeavor. And it's change and it's uncomfortable, and I think that's pretty well stated. And so we're really looking for, from the OTC and ODOT, which I'll admit has been better in the last couple of months than the outset of this whole endeavor. But how can we do a better job of partnering so that our communities are not just feeling heard, but being listened to?
Well, thank you for the question. And I have all of your questions, so I'll try and help move this along. So I know you're on a calendar, and every time I chair a meeting, I feel the pressure you're feeling to get through the agenda. So again, I want to thank you for inviting me. I think a part of the answer to that question is opportunities like this. So this invitation is welcome, and I would welcome additional invitations. As you mentioned, value pricing, which is how it's referred to in the statute. So since I'm a lawyer, I go to the wording in the statute. But it's got many names and many meanings, and they're all important to be attentive to. So there's a range of things people are interested in seeing happen, whether it's to disincentivize something or incentivize something else, so that congestion pricing is often used to refer to the kind of prioritization of how funds are spent. Congestion relief is primarily focused on cars and trucks and other vehicles. So the point of that is that, this is something new. And that's kind of the headline here, I think, for the state. And we have a few bridges that you pull up to a toll booth and pay $2 and go across the bridge of the gods. That's not what this is. There won't be tolling booths. It's going to be automated. If you've been in Seattle and driven across the floating bridge, for example, you get tolled on that. That is something you receive your toll statement by mail. You don't even know you're being tolled. So for those of you who are fans of the New Jersey Turnpike in 1968, that's not what we're talking about. So it's going to be automated. It's going to be, in fact, cars are being built now to allow the tolling infrastructure to read your car and toll you based on when you got on into the tolling system and now when you're leaving it. So it's going to be a modern tolling system. On your question of partnering, participation, communication, that is critical. I think we have some of that going on, probably not enough. We have it going on between staffs. We also need it going on probably to a greater extent between elected officials and people on the commission, maybe particularly me. I say that because the other member of the commission who is from the Portland region, Orlando Simpson, is, give you a little spoiler alert here, our meeting in September will be his last meeting. His term ended the end of June. He is a carryover member, and the governor proposed a whole bunch of new appointments yesterday, including his successor. Not to prolong this, but I think we do have some things in place, like the Regional Toll Advisory Committee. We've had an Mpac, which is an equity advisory committee, in place for quite some time. They've reported up to the commission several times. We've essentially embraced the direction they're headed on equity. Very good group of people, great recommendations. I'm not saying every single specific detail has been worked out, or that we might not have a point of variation from Mpac, but we've had members sitting on it from the commission. First, Orlando Simpson, who was then replaced by Sharon Smith, who's from Bend. So I'm trying to get members who are not from Portland. Orlando and I are the two from Portland, to understand it. Sharon's very bright and capable and is the general counsel of the Bend-Lapine School District. And she's been very active participant. And before that, Orlando was. So I don't know how much of these committees that are in place, C4 diversion subcommittee, there have been mitigation workshops. We're moving into the NEPA process on tolling this fall. There'll be opportunity there for a lot of involvement in the process. But in terms of communication that among like this, I think we probably just need to schedule it out, frankly. And I'm happy to do that with your co-chairs or however you like to do it. The last thing I'll say, because I know we have a number of topics to get through here, is, we invite your ideas. We don't have to have all the ideas on this. We're all just going to have to come to agreement on what we're both willing to, or all willing to participate in. But I would encourage you all to come forward with ideas. We will come forward with some ideas. Hopefully we'll find some that are mutually acceptable, and then, check in, are these working? This is working, this isn't working. This probably isn't necessary. Here's something we're not doing that would be good to do. So because this is a new program, because it's just kind of the way it's played out, Clackamas County has, and the I-205 corridors, what I should say is going to be a little bit ahead of the I-5 corridor that we ought to work together to figure out and model communication, participation, partnering efforts that are could be used, hopefully can be models for what we do going forward. And, you know, if you look way out, my suspicion is that 205 and I-5 will not be the last corridors. I don't know if that's 20 years from now, 50 years from now, when it is, but my guess is at some point there'll be a need for somewhere else. So that's speculative. I'm not indicating anything. I'm not suggesting we're thinking about anything. I'm just saying one would think there might be something beyond these first two corridors down the line, or maybe way down the line. So are there follow-ups on that? Or things people want to say back?
Well, appreciate that, Chairman Brockman. So I'll just kind of keep working through here some of these precursory ones, but
yeah.
One of the questions there on kind of our outline there that we sent to you is in response to more about the letter that we sent to OTC and ODOT back earlier this year, and we were expecting a response from OTC and we got a response from a ODOT staff member. We were a little disappointed by one, where the response came from that level, and that it really was less of a response and more of the same that we've been getting. And I guess that goes back to that communication piece, that if we're going to continue to move forward and partner, I think your idea and your suggestion of either yourself or, you know, another board member, you know, popping in here periodically for us we would be open to that, and that would be beneficial. I think seeing, when you said that, I saw a number of heads nodding affirmatively in terms of that being something that we would appreciate having happen. So how do you see, or what decisions are you all at the OTC level looking at in terms of how to reduce the impacts of the value pricing, if I'm going to use the correct jargon now, value pricing here in the 205 corridor along those communities like Canby along 99E that are going to be impacted?
Well, first, let me address the first point in terms of communication, and you know, that's not the communication level on that particular issue that was raised about the federal money that I would want to have going forward. And I'm not quite sure how that happened the way it happened, frankly, but and I'm certainly willing to talk to you now or at a later date about what the process was, but it basically involved, we're getting $1.2 billion roughly in funds into the state over 5 years from the federal infrastructure bill. About 2/3 of it is directed funds. That leaves about $400 million. We're under a settlement agreement to comply with the federal ADA, and that goes to curb cuts, and I'm sure you've seen them all over the place because they're being built all over the place pursuant to the settlement agreement. And that's going to be that's going to end up being hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I didn't just say 300 million, it's going to be more than that. In order to do that, they're just, I mean, we're doing a major retrofit. And so our increment that we felt was necessary in order to keep in compliance with the settlement agreement and in order to keep that program moving, so you're not just continually backloading it and risking an enforcement action or something else, was 100 million. So if you start with 400 million in discretionary and you have 100 million that's going to ADA, you're now down to 300. Roughly the same time inflation started hitting and the cost of the project went up. I think Mandy's here, she could walk you through the numbers, but it went up substantially. So now we've got a widening cost gap and we've got less money. And then as you all know, there are 5 of us. We're from around the state, and there was just a feeling by a majority of the commission that this project had funding named in House Bill 2017. Many other projects around the state didn't, and that we had to remain committed to a statewide approach and just recognize all of the demands on what was, I don't want to say $1.2 billion is not a lot of money, because it's a lot of money, but remember that that bill, as introduced by President Biden, was about a $3.6 billion bill, and the one that was passed and ultimately signed into law was about a trillion. Let me get the right figure. Was 3.6 trillion, and that it got reduced. Now I'm talking about the entire bill nationwide, and it got reduced to about 1.2 trillion. So, that's a 2/3 reduction in the proposal. I don't want to get into the politics of it. I don't want to get into where people are on 3.6 versus 1.2 or anything in the middle. It's just what happened in the Congress. And having worked in the Congress, I'll just say from my years working in the Congress, that was a big haircut. And so it left us with only $300 million in discretionary, and there's a $100 billion fund in the Secretary's office that people can apply for funding, and there are a number of them. Nothing quite like this, because it's a named project in House Bill 2017, and it's a premier project in terms of tolling. But there are a lot of things around the state that need investment. And so we're relying on getting some of that discretionary money out of the Secretary's $100 billion fund, and think we will. And so all of that went into the decision. How it was communicated, again, my apologies. That won't happen again. So I just want you to know that we recognize that pioneering something like this is difficult. We're pioneering with you, and we're mandated to do it, and we're trying to do it. If the new governor and the new legislature go another direction, then we'll be doing something new. But there have been a number of sessions since 2017, and the legislature is not modified on this. So we're now 5 years into the bill. So our assumption is this is the charge. Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with your premise that legislative direction under 2017 stands. So I understand both OTC and staff of ODOT are moving in this direction. And in most cases, I really respect the work of leadership to make sure that the oars are in the water and the boat's pointing in the same direction. The one place where I would argue is that I do believe that the legislature has slightly moderated. In 3055, that's a framework that our county and city lobbyists all engaged on quite deeply. And I find us in a place where definitions and agreements under 3055 that speak to the texture of how dollars could be spent to address local community needs, that's being forgotten and ignored in current conversation. So I'm not putting my hand up to correct you, but to say from our perspective, it goes 2017, then 3055, and we should be operating from that framework of definitions and community investment and not recreating the wheel, which is where we're really frustrated right now.
Well, I really appreciate the comment, and you are right. So it's a good comment, and I agree with you that 3055 modified 2017 when it comes to this effort, and in fact is a reason that we're meeting tonight probably is that when it was all dedicated to the Rose Quarter project before 3055, there was not the flexibility to do what we're now trying to do in terms of funding through tolling, admittedly, but funding the I-205 project because candidly, it's the one ready to go. And it's the one that has, I'll let you guys characterize this for yourselves, but I would characterize it as having people, some people want to have the improvements at least done, not everyone. But, that helps it to move forward in the queue, if you will. Another thing the final thing I'll say on this is we do feel the obligation that Councilor Lewis was referring to, in that, we are 5 years out in this, and while there was the change in 3055, we have to try and move forward in the things we're obligated to move forward, and that I think the members of the commission feel a responsibility there, and so we have to keep working on these things. And frankly, part of that is we don't want to go back to the legislature, which will inevitably come and ask for additional resources and have them say, you didn't use the resources we gave you. So we're trying to be attentive to the political record we're creating here too, in terms of, can you get things done? Having said that, I think this is we want this to be the best value pricing, congestion pricing, tolling program in the country. And the way it will be that program is if we are as attentive as possible to issues like equity, diversion, and a range of things. So working with you is essential. I wouldn't say it's optional. It's essential that we are communicating a lot of that with staff, but not all. And I recognize we have to be talking.
Thank you, sir. Ms. French.
Thank you. I have one question. At the beginning of when you were talking, you mentioned the toll being automated. Now, how does that, can you explain to me so I can explain to others how that works? I mean, we've heard that, we've got low income, we've got, you don't know how to do, first responders, you don't know. What is automated? How would that work? How does that, if I decide to drive across the 205 bridge to West Lynn, how is that automated to charge me for that? Where does the bill come from?
Well, so I'm not the expert here. Let me start there, okay? I'm not the expert on how this tolling system actually works. We have people who are. And so I'll start by saying I'm happy to put them in touch with you so you get the full answer. But the short answer is that the system will, I think newer cars actually have systems in the car that allow them to be read by some means. Older cars, I think in Washington State, for example, they photographed the license plate. And but maybe I should ask Mandy to jump in here if she's got a better explanation. But at any rate, then the bill would come from ODOT, and it would come in the mail, and it would be like any other bill that many other bills. I know everyone's now automated and it's all computerized, but a typical paper bill that is mailed to your house, you would open it up and it would say, crossed Abernathy Bridge on February 14th, 2027, $7.
If you have an older vehicle that doesn't have that capability, how does
that's why I think there's also a photographic element to at least at least one form of the kind of automated system I'm talking about. And I believe they may still be using it in the Seattle metro area, because I had a friend that didn't know about it and just called me and said, I got this bill. Is it for real? Is this spam? Is this, I'm being played here? And I said, it's real. You have to pay the bill for using the bridge.
Okay, and have you, are there I know this sounds weird, but I mean, these are questions that people bring up. Okay,
Sure.
it can be automated. You go across, you know, from Oregon City to West Lynn.
Yeah.
And you're automated, so you're going to get a bill sometime whenever for however much, because you haven't decided that.
Right.
But and then it's photos. Okay,
Maybe.
who
Maybe not.
maybe
I don't
okay,
wanna-
maybe
Could
but
be.
who is going to and my another question is, who is going to do this? I mean, we have a DMV that's backed up to the nines. Who's going to look at these photos and look up the license plates and figure it out and send these bills? I mean, is there?
So
is there
it will
something
be as
set up for that?
automated as it will be as automated. Sorry to interrupt. It will be
No,
as
that's okay.
automated as possible. And we are going to set up a back office to do this up here. Will not be DMV. It will be the tolling office
Which is state ran.
run by ODOT.
ODOT, okay.
But I don't think it's going to be run out of DMV.
Well, I mean, I'm just giving an idea.
It's going to be a special office for this purpose.
Okay.
And it's going to have to be, we have a lot of questions to answer here in terms of how it's going to be designed. And we're going to do that with a lot, we're going to try and have collaboration on that so that people know, so people can, so you're knowledgeable about it. So now I always do this when I start talking, I trigger more hands than I put down. I think Kathy was next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Trent messaged in the chat box that, maybe following later tonight or our next meeting, if there are technical questions, we can start capturing those and get those to the right people, since much like we are experts on, knowledgeable on everything and experts on nothing. I think Chairman Brockland is much in the same boat in regards to how it's going to be executed. So if you've got those kinds of technical questions, let's hold that off for another time. Councilor Heisey.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair, for being here. I do really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. And I appreciate the offer of future conversations. And I also serve on the Tolling Policy Advisory Committee.
Oh,
so
great. So you can tell us how it's going to work.
I was thinking, well, I did have a recent kind of discussion about this, but that's neither here nor there right now. And this conversation is coming up there as well. And I want to know a little more about your thoughts on how we can get to a place where we're really doing more of a collaboration with local government. And I say that because I want the same things out of tolling that you do. I want this to be an equitable system. I want it to be the best in the country. I keep hearing this line from ODOT and I'm in. But I want to be a better partner in that work, and so I'm trying to get to where we are having a conversation that feels like a collaboration more than we're going to hear you, but we're not going to necessarily listen if it doesn't fit in the framework, which is kind of the experience that I think many people who are in this virtual room feel like they've been having at the divergence subcommittee meetings, in ODOT presentations, at C4, on and on. So I guess I'm trying to make sure that you're really seeing that piece, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on the OTC, not as, I'm not asking you to speak as for ODOT, but as part of the OTC, how can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I can only speak for myself, not the other four, because you all know what I'm saying. You don't speak for your, Councilor Lewis is not going to speak for Councilor Nolan, right? Who's a friend of mine. I've known a long time, so I can use her name. Not because they probably have a good relationship, it's just that, Mary wouldn't appreciate that. So she wants to speak for herself. So same with R5. So I'll just talk about it from my standpoint. I view this as we're in a we're in an opportunity, a period of opportunity, because there's a lot of transition going on in our state, and there's a lot of transition going on in our region. And there's hopefully a lot of consciousness raising going on about the things we need to think about, and we need to think about a longer list than probably ever before. So COVID and Zoom is not the greatest tool. Given that, it would be better to be together in person, in my view, but we're playing the hand we're dealt. And for me, I think it's figuring out who should be talking about what. And people are going to want a lot of information about this. So the question we just had about how does the tolling system work? First of all, let's just identify the things we want to talk about, and then figure out how many different points of connection do we need, and how do we organize the major questions, not every little question, but the major questions. And then, you know, if it's a policy question on how's the funding going to be spent, how is it going to be allocated, how is it going to be committed, that feels more like a policy question. We're a policy body. I mean, we're volunteers. We all have other jobs, right? I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm not, I mean, I have worked in the Senate, and I have background in transportation, but that's how I would organize it. I would try and figure out what are the major things. I mean, from our standpoint, we have people at ODOT working on it every day, so we're relying on them. But there may be a subset of questions that we should be communicating with between one another. So that would inform the work our staffs are doing. So I guess that would be my subject to further revision and, you know, getting it better than I just put it. I'm just trying to, because it's all new. And the communication challenge on this is enormous. I was told by someone I know who is a senior person in Seattle city government, when they put in tolling, that the initial, this is hearsay. I'm not vouching for anything this person said to me other than they said it, because they were talking about what someone had said to them. But they said that when they first started, the first poll on tolling in Seattle had 9% support. And there's tolling in Seattle. And now the support on it is way up, because they've been able to do things with it they wanted to do. Whether it was building something, or providing a program, or subsidizing something, or investing in active transportation. I mean, you know, Seattle's like Portland, progressive city. The same kinds of conversations are going on up there. I find that interesting, but it took time to build support, and that's because the communication on this is complicated. And I think we work from wherever we are, right? You meet people wherever they are. If your last experience with tolling was 1968, you know, New Jersey Turnpike, and you're throwing it in that green bucket, that's what you think you're going to be doing. You're not. It's not going to be anything like that experience. So we got to unlearn people, if that's a word, and then reteach them at the same time. So anyway, I want to take the questions.
Thank you.
Before I get kicked out of here.
Yeah, we're going to go Councilor Sherman, Commissioner Savas, and then we'll wrap it up, because we want to respect your time as well, Chairman Brockman. So
this won't be the only time. I'll be back. Unless
Okay.
you say, no, that was terrible. Maybe we don't ever want to see him again.
No, so far we're being well behaved. So it seems like we might be able to do this again. That's good. Councilor Sherman, did you want to ask your question?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Chair Van Brockman, thank you very much for being here. And as someone who does still drive the Jersey Turnpike, yeah, they got rid of the bucket. So now you actually have to hand money to a person every time you go through, which is that much worse. And no credit cards. So
I won't make any East Coast comments, although I lived in DC for 7 years. So I do.
So it will be better. Whatever we do technologically, it will be better. And so I guess, you know, maybe what I'll share with you is, you know, some of the things that I've found a little frustrating or difficult to navigate, I guess, would be,
No.
you know, many times as we're trying to kind of think through the process, and I think you've already kind of alluded to this, and you know, the notion that a lot of what we're doing is, I think the phrase that ODOT uses is building the plane while we're flying it. You know, we're trying to figure this stuff out as we go along, and so as we've interacted with ODOT on a lot of the initial things that were laid out to us, quite often it maybe doesn't make common sense or doesn't ring true to us as we kind of go through this process. And so it would be very helpful to have like an empowered ODOT point of contact that we could work through when we have questions arise. There would be someone who's actually able to really be a conduit that we could know that these things are being heard and addressed. And I think, you know, a great example would be, and I think you brought this up earlier, talking about how we want to, you know, be best in the country when we're dealing with diversion and mitigation and things like that.
Yeah.
And so the initial draft document, I think it's the OHP document that was brought up, you know, lays out a definition for like diversion and mitigation that is really specific and so restrictive that from a common sense perspective, it won't do what it's supposed to do. When we talk about, you know, diversion being on corridors that are only within 1 mile of the highway, only parallel, and diversion doesn't count if it's trips that would have been less than 3 miles. Those are things those are all still diversion. They're just not within the confines of what we're laying out. And so I guess my point being, not that I'm asking you to address those issues today, but my point being, as we identify things like that that are very important to us and that we think are going to be very, very important to our constituents, how can we work through those, work collaboratively with ODOT so that we're all getting to, as Council President Heise, you know, indicated, we all want to get to the same place. We just want to do it in a way that isn't disruptive for the next 20 years till we get to our 2045 plan. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, the specifics, I'm not going to be familiar with every proposed draft reg or rule. I'm just not. But the spirit of the conversation you're suggesting, I do think is valuable. And I will say on that front, just as an opening idea, and Mandy, I think, is still on, you know, she's a superb project manager and very responsive and very approachable. So she may have an idea on that. She might be the person, or she might suggest someone else on her staff. She's the person I call. So
very good. I just want to make sure that, you know, as we
probably hating me right now for saying, here, have some more work. Here's another 25 emails. But I do think I'm very high on our team.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you very much. I think, you know, just trying to avoid kind of some of the prior conversations where there might be a little bit of, you know, hey, we can't do this because really it's an OTC decision and there's a lot of kind of, you know, it's got to go in this direction.
Yeah.
So really just kind of trying to define that. Thank you. I appreciate the time tonight. Thank you.
You bet. My pleasure. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Van Broecklyn, for being here tonight. You and I have had a couple conversations over the period of time, and I think it's important to recognize that Seattle, or the state of Washington, WashDOT, is always building capacity. They have so much capacity per capita, far more than we have in this area. This area is underinvested in our interstate system for a long time. So we have this puny, undersized interstate system, which has been underinvested in, and which now we're going to essentially, by some, be punished with congestion pricing because we really can't do express lanes, so we don't have enough lanes to do it correctly. But the key one, it's really important. This is probably the biggest issue that I'm kind of disappointed about, frankly, is that we went in this eyes open, that Clackamas County got behind this project, the construction project, to reduce diversion, the dangerous accidents, and the impacts. And that diversion is interstate traffic. That's not local jurisdiction responsibility. That is the state and the Federal Highway Authority. That's their responsibility. To congestion price people off your facility is somewhat disingenuous in the sense that we're not really taking responsibility. But the part that it really hurts here is that there has been no meaningful solution proposed for diversion. Mitigation's mitigation. And we're told we're gonna, and these words bother me, frankly, we're gonna monitor diversion. Well, we've been monitoring it for 12 years, 15 years. We know what it is. We know where it needs to be fixed. Your own studies have shown where it needs to be fixed, but there's still no solution. So I think we need something meaningful here, because if this is what we're going to start with and we're going to be recognized around the country for, I think we're off to a bad start. But I want to stress the diversion, the responsibility for it, and the lives that'll be lost as a result of the accidents and the people. That's a responsibility of the state and the Federal Highway Authority.
Yeah, Paul, I hear what you're saying, and I will just give you this 1 2-minute kind of insight. So in the early 80s, I worked on the first light rail line here. I came back from working in the Senate, and I was working at the city of Portland. I succeeded Bill Wyatt in the job he had at the city. So, and I was hired in large part because we had put all these plans in place, and now we had to get the money to do things. And a lot of it's coming out of DC then. Between 82 and 86, we expanded I-84 from 4 to 6 lanes from where it starts at I-5. Basically the southern end of what's now called the Rose Quarter Project. From there out, right, eastbound to about 82nd. 4 to 6 lanes and a 15-mile light rail line and we built the downtown segment of it because there was no light rail. So it's the whole downtown set up around the library and down, right, first line, and 15 miles out to Gresham on the light rail. And then I don't know how long the highway portion was, but we expanded it from 4 to 6 lanes. I'm not saying this because I'm proposing that we widen the freeway from 4 to 6 lanes, because that would be World War III in Portland today. But the point I wanted to make was this: the highway improvements were 90% federally funded, 90% in the early 80s. And the light rail line was about 83% federally funded. And if you're related to a congressman or a senator, my apologies, but they just kind of walked away from it in terms of, maybe for a variety of reasons that are justified, but that just quit happening because they said we want a 50% local match, and we're the most imbalanced state tax system in the country, 77% dependent on income and property. We have a relatively small state population wise, and we have people running through it every day that don't pay any tax. And then we go to their state and pay their tax. I mean, I'm not promoting tonight a sales tax, but I'm just saying you put all that together, federal disinvestment or less investment, and then I think that's how you don't get what we don't have that you were talking about. What happened in Seattle is they had Magnuson and Jackson in the 60s and 70s, and they dumped a ton of money into concrete in the Seattle area. And so that's why I-5 in Seattle looks like it does versus I-5 in Portland, is they had the 2 key chairs in the Senate, and they were highly influential, and it was a period where they were investing in it like that. I'm not defending any of this. It's just an interesting history lesson. And now suggesting 90% light rail, do more light rail in Clackamas County, do light rail on the Barber corridor, get 85% federal funding. It's a pipe dream. So, you're not going to get $3.6 trillion proposed, 1.2 approved. You know, think if our 1.2 billion out here over the next 5 years was 3.6 billion. Be a very different story. So I do put quite a bit of, I'm concerned about the federal government not doing what it needs to be doing on infrastructure. And every state and major city in the country, whether it was all going into bike lanes or transit, or I don't want to have that debate, where it should go. Just the amount is it's just not where it needs to be. And it's still not after this bill. It's nothing that our delegation did. It's just, you know, Manchin was not going to support anything over 1.2 trillion. Okay, I'm going to get out of your hair. You have real business to conduct.
Well, Chairman Brockman, I know, and Councilor Akval will get your question and maybe email it there through Trent to Chairman Brockman's. And
I'll take it and be really quick.
Well, you want to feel
I am capable of it.
All right, floor is yours, Counselor. Let it be nice now.
Okay, well, thank you. And I guess it'll be quick. You get to decide how to answer it. So you can give a quick answer, I suppose. But my question really is kind of about pursuing a unified start time. And I think that might have been in some of the notes.
Yeah.
You know, in Wilsonville, we really appreciate OTC's advancing the I-5 Boone Bridge and seismic improvement project. And I know many local governments, the Metro Mayors Consortium, have also expressed concerns over tolling just I-205, over concerns diverting more traffic onto I-5. And so I'm wondering if can tolling be implemented simultaneously on both of those areas, or just,
I think there
some
are
clarification there.
I think there's challenges with doing it that way because it would create delays in this project that would potentially increase its cost, and so we just keep chasing higher numbers. But I will say that there might be some creative conversations about that we haven't had. So I don't want to just take it off the table, but you know, we're still relying on tolling to fund the project 205. And there just isn't another viable alternative right now. And I worry about cost increase. And I also worry about not getting at some of the other things that you all deal with that your constituents are frustrated by, like congestion, like, you know, other things that they're concerned about. Climbing over the Westland Hill, I mean, you know, all that stuff just sits there and frustration goes up. My view has always been we have to show some progress in the region in a relatively timely way, or we potentially alienate people more than we know what they don't like today, but you kind of have to project out if we did that and it took an extra year, what kind of frustration would that create, or problems, traffic, equity, et cetera, that we're just not getting to. So, but the primary thing is the funding doesn't hold together because we've got to bond it to build the whole thing, well, even to build the bridge. So that's my short answer, but I would like to have a longer conversation.
Okay, here's to creative continuing conversations. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I am now hitting the leave button. That's the best thing I've done for you all night.
Appreciate the time, sir.
See you later.
All right.
Hang in there. Keep the faith.
Thank you, everyone, for that conversation. My initial, before we move on, I think maybe some initial takeaways we can discuss. Trent, if you don't mind if I hijack the agenda a little bit. What I heard was that, yes, he's open to coming back and making this a more regular occurrence. That's great. One thing I know that I appreciate Commissioner Savas as well as Councilor Akkerval hitting on was the pieces about diversion and what is that going to look like, and how is that going to be paid for, and what are those impacts going to be? And Canby just went through a very lengthy meeting with county and ODOT staff about the diversion piece and what is that going to look like, and understanding that it's not just as Mayor Buck said, it is not just parallel to 205, and it's not just a mile from 205. It's much greater than that. And so I think, if at least the initial conversation from Canby with ODOT in the county is that message is being delivered and that's being heard, which is good. We did not really get to discuss much in terms of what the economic ramifications are going to be and what does OTC and the state look at in terms of how to address that for our area. That is going to be an impactful piece as people, move off that section of highway. How long will they do that? I don't know. Those are things that, as we keep saying. I think Brett, you said it about building it as we're flying it. We want to be, leader in the country. It's not going to be, I grew up in Ohio. We have turnpikes there, and I remember my dad, throwing the change into the bucket to try to get it to read the correct amount when he might have maybe shortened it by a quarter or something. I remember that as a kid. That's not what we're talking about. Great, but it's still the pricing piece. I hear the dollars and cents, and there's still a lot there for us to wrap our minds around. So, what are some of the other takeaways that you all had? Kenny?
I was pleasantly surprised at how many questions he took, and that he gave us almost twice the initially scheduled amount. So I think that bodes well for being able to build a better relationship going forward. That's kind of what most stood out to me.
No, I agree. That's good. Councilor Sherman?
Yeah, thank you. My initial takeaway is that OTC and ODOT may be, have slightly different, well, I shouldn't say slightly different, that there's an overarching theme to this, which is we're moving ahead. We need to get this thing going. We'll deal with the issues later. We're just going to keep this process moving because it's taken too long and we need to be a leader in this. And I appreciate that. I understand kind of the rationale behind it. I think Chair Van Brockland kind of, laid that on the table early on. With a different governor and or different people in Salem, this whole process may change dramatically, and they may alter that. So I think that was kind of one of the takeaways. The other takeaway, and I don't know if it was just kind of in the context of this conversation, but the OTC needs to have a really, really good handle on the details to make good decisions as we move forward, because that's the decision-making body that's making this happen. And so to say, hey, a lot of these details is kind of more somebody else's, kind of purview. And maybe it's just that, again, with the small confines of this conversation, that we weren't able to really kind of get into that. But, I just want to make sure that that as decisions are made, they are being made with kind of eyes wide open to what the details actually are. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Sherman, that is a great point, right? So he made the comment made being, right, OTC is the policy body, and then therefore I take that as ODOT being the execution of that policy. And I get it, right? We're mayors and councilors and other boards that we sit on, and we don't necessarily know the day-to-day operations of our, wastewater treatment facility. Totally get it. But we still need to know enough that if there's a policy piece that's bubbling up as the plane is being built, as it's flown, then we've got to take a look at, is there a policy piece that we're missing that we need to check and adjust on? And I don't know how much of that is occurring. And that's maybe one of those things we take back to kind of go, okay, OTC, what policy check and adjusts are you doing on, issues concerning Clackamas County in this project? Commissioner Lewis, and then Heisey, and then Mr. Gronke, and then we'll move on.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on what we heard. I think that it's definitely incumbent upon us to figure out what that slate of new appointments was yesterday. I haven't looked at it, but there's going to be a real problem if there's not another Portland person put in Commissioner Simpson's place, because leaving one from the Portland area and everybody else from not the Portland area would do a real injustice. Because how to even describe the situation we're in to somebody who doesn't live around here, it's hard. The second thing, not to try and diagnose too much what's happening, but I feel like ODOT, under the OTC's direction, has spent the past 1.5 to 2 years helping us imagine all the things that tolling could pay for and all of the good policy that could be in place around it. And now the direction ODOT is seeming to go is bare minimum, what's required literally to the law. That's the only thing that they're offering. And we're going to need some real leadership to change that direction, or else it's just a money grab, which is what we've been told this wasn't. And that was actually going to benefit community and benefit commuters and benefit freight. So I think we have some educating of other leaders on OTC. Bob's maybe just hearing it for the first time, but we need all 5 of them to know that.
That's great. Thank you very much, Christine. Councilor Heisey.
Thank you. And I apologize if I repeat some of what was said. I had to go get some tea. But I heard in the conversation a real willingness to engage and an interest in a very particular set of policy questions is kind of what it sounded like in terms of getting direction on how we could move this conversation forward. So I'd like us to maybe spend a little time at some point thinking about what that might be sometime before the next conversation, to see if we can make this a fruitful conversation next time around. And, I agree with everything that everyone else has already said about this, so I won't belabor it, but I do want to see if we can get to the point where we can, I don't want to engage in the technical conversations and the what ifs. We have excellent technical advisors available to us from ODOT. I think we need to really narrow in on elected to elected. What is the conversation we need to be having? And how do we help explicate what we are seeing in our communities already? And that this isn't imaginary. This is, I almost feel like a tour is necessary or something. How do we make concrete our understanding of what the situation is today in a way that helps shape the policies that the OTC ultimately is responsible for adopting?
Thank you. Mr. Gronke.
I was impressed by Commissioner Brockland's political skills. I'm very happy I don't have to explain this to anyone, because honestly, in listening to the whole thing, what I heard was a number of very skillful answers, which did not really answer any of the questions asked. I don't see any change from where we were before this meeting began.
Ed, I think you muted yourself there. Oh. Okay, Ed, thank you. Okay, well, I again appreciate everybody. I know that walking into this, that I'm sure we're still very, like I said, we're a passionate group and frankly fired up about this and where it's at. So we will, ideas from you on next steps, please share with Trent or with Commissioner Savas or myself, and we'll talk at the executive board about when maybe we can invite him back for another conversation, or if we feel like we're just, if that's of value. So let us know. All right, we'll try to get caught up here. So the next piece on the agenda is the Oregon Highway Plan Policy Amendment on congestion pricing, and there was a couple of items there, the policy amendment webpage in there, the draft letter, and then the proposed goal amendment or goal 6 amendment, and the draft letter is there. Trent, did you want to elaborate or just get into some discussion?
Thank you very much. Great conversation tonight. As your staff, my takeaway was you got someone who says that they're willing to listen. So if you got things to say, let me know how to help navigate that conversation with you. That's my job, is to help move those conversations forward and connect the bridge. No pun intended there, but let me know how to help on that. Yes, moving forward, the Oregon Highway Plan, Goal 6 Amendment. In August, you asked for more time and you got more time. Or actually in July, you asked for time and you got more time. And then in August, you provided a variety of feedback on what you want to say, more formally say in response to the Goal 6 Amendment. So this draft is me and some team members here at the county taking your comments and putting them into a more robust dialogue on what you want to say to the OTC and others as they move forward with the Goal 6 Amendment. Having said that, I also need y'all to know that we have heard through the grapevine that the OTC will probably be updating a draft of this, a version of this draft that they've already released here in a week or so before the next OTC meeting. And then, but their OTC is not going to make a decision on it until I think into October. So a little while away from when they'll make a decision. So you'll see an updated draft. I think some of it reflects a lot of the comments that are already coming in, is what we've heard. Haven't seen the official draft. Oh, thanks. November is when the OTC will make that final decision. So you'll see a new draft soon. All that being said, though, it is still relevant for you to put in these broader comments, these more robust comments. So not to take away from what you're working on, they will make an update, I think, and staff here thinks what your comments are going to say are still very relevant to the broader conversation that's happening with these with this policy moving forward. So in your packet is a draft. Happy to make edits to that draft as needed, or if you like where it's at, I'm here to help you finish this up. Gave us ourselves a little bit of time here, but I'm glad that we actually got that extra time with Chairman Brocklin. So let me know how to help you with this particular draft. Thank you.
So Trent, just for clarification on what you're hearing through the grapevine there, and maybe I think Commissioner Lewis and Councilor Heisey were nodding along with that as well. So if you have information, please share. So with a new draft, when you're talking about the draft in regards to Goal 6, that there would be a new draft of that coming out, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was flipping through my notes and you can see behind me the lights turned off in the building where I'm at. But and I'm talking to you, so I can't go turn them back on just yet. But I did get a helpful note on September 9. There will be a new version of Goal 6 draft uploaded to the OTC website. So that's September 9. Look for that then. And of course, I can share it out when that time comes around. And then the OTC will meet like a week later, but the OTC will not make a decision on it until November.
So with that, does that then create additional opportunity for us to comment on the updated draft as this group and as individual cities?
I have not heard that the time period for comment has changed. So I would still treat September 15 as your comment window.
Okay. Commissioner Sadas and then Councilor Heisey.
Yeah, what we heard last Wednesday, not yesterday, but a week ago at the first advisory committee, tolling advisory committee meeting, was that they were going to release the Goal 6 amendments a few days, or yeah, the Friday before the next time the OTC met, and we expressed our concern, some of us did on Wednesday, that having some more time for us to comment so that we could have prepared responses to the OTC would be ideal. So I don't know that time frame exactly, if they modified it or not, but we're going to have to be ready to act quickly, probably on the staff side, to look at those amendments, make the changes, and or look at the changes, evaluate it, and then whatever suggestions or comments we're going to have, we may not have the opportunity to meet and talk about those collectively as we're sitting here today. So if that's the case, if that's how we're going to be facing future decisions, I'm a little bit worried. But there again, if Trent said the decision won't be made till November, I guess there still will be time for comment. Was that about right, Trent?
Yeah, I mean, time gives you options is what I would say. So yes, I see a comment here from Counselor Lewis. You can still go do in-person testimony to the OTC. Nothing's official till they adopt it. Showing up, I think that's a really big part of this. The decision maker is the person who was just visiting here. And so that is a huge opportunity to go and figure out how to create those opportunities. At the same time, you're not meeting in October. And so that's one less conversation that you get to have about this. Getting this information on the record before September 15th is a way to reinforce what you were trying to accomplish. You still drive, Trent's opinion here, Clackamas County group as a group still drives a narrative on the relative impacts to tolling. Other people are not thinking about it in the same way that y'all get to think about it, because it's going to be real for you before it's real for everybody else.
Thanks, Trent. That's a great way to put that.
I have brought in my colleague, Jamie Stasny, who is, I remember when I said I heard this through the grapevine, she's my grapevine access. So here's Jamie to help cover me on some of that.
All right, well, let's get Councilor Heisey's comment, and then Jamie will let you back up Trent.
Yeah, I'll just say real quickly that there will be, I believe this is coming back to the RTAC. Jamie can nod or shake her head at the end of September as well. So to the extent that we have conversations at C4 Metro about this, at least that smaller group would be able to give some feedback about that September 9th draft that comes out. And I'm always available, always happy to talk. So if you want to help me be expressive in a useful way at the RTAC meeting about this, I'm happy to be part of that.
Great, thank you. Jamie, anything to add to this part of the conversation right now?
Thank you, Chair Hodson. I would just chime in to back Trent up and also to add a little bit of staff perspective in saying that there has been some conversation with staff at ODOT about this, which has led to some updates being made. So some of the themes that are coming out, there seems to be regional alignment around. So we have been feeling heard somewhat, which I think is resulting in this updated version that's going to be shared. I think it's supposed to be posted on the 9th. So I just wanted to share that there has been some good conversation. We have seen a little bit of what may be coming, and I do think that there has been some responsiveness. But as Trent said earlier on reviewing your letter, I think the themes and the comments are still applicable. And a little bit of budging is much appreciated, but I think there's a lot more work to do. So just wanted to add that, and happy to answer questions if you have any.
Great. Thank you, Jamie, as always, for being here and being in the forefront of this conversation. So thank you. So back to the letter at hand that Trent has submitted to us and staff have crafted very well. Are there any thoughts on this letter? Go forth and conquer. Is there some suggestions? Going once. Yes, Mr. Myers.
I think it's a great letter. And I'm wondering if you need a motion in order to formalize its approval. I think that it can also act for Metro Subcommittee as a guide if it is that committee's job eventually to comment on the September 9th release. So should I make a motion to have it sent and approved as is?
I would say yes, sir. Feel free.
So made.
Excellent. So motion made by Mr. Myers, our CPO rep, to approve the letter as is. Is there a second?
Seconded, Mark Scholl.
Commissioner Schultz seconds that. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? And anyone opposed? Okay, Trent, looks like we're going to move forward with this letter and we'll gladly sign it and send it on.
Thanks very much. Probably just while we have Jamie in here, it's a good opportunity to do a quick update here that we would have just done at the end of the meeting. So I don't think we're taking too much time off of this topic on the agenda, but you have a diversion subcommittee meeting coming up for those of you who are engaged in that C4 I-205 tolling diversion subcommittee. Thanks for making that title. I mean, maybe I wrote it, but it's a really long group title. I love writing it out and saying it out loud. They got a meeting coming up on the third Wednesday, and it's a pretty important one because it follows these jurisdiction meetings that ODOT has been having with all the jurisdictions that have been very localized. Those meetings, I believe, concluded today. And, Jamie was at a lot of those. And so, Jamie, if you want to take an opportunity just to kind of give a quick update on what the diversion subcommittee will be talking about, that might be fruitful for this group and the rest who may not be attending that diversion subcommittee. Just kind of hear some of the high level stuff to know what to expect moving forward.
Thank you, Trent, and thank you, Chair, for giving me a little bit of space here. I know there's potential that you all might not be meeting in October, so I think it's really important to share a quick update here today. Things are moving quickly. I think you all know that. We're expecting them to drop the draft EA in November. It will likely have a 45-day comment period, and as we all know, November contains a holiday, and so does December. So we are just keeping all of that in mind, and I hope you will too. We may need to have more conversation outside of normal schedules. So we're going to have to be flexible and make sure that we're all coordinated and communicating about this and able to respond in a timely manner. So just wanted to say that first. So as Trent said, there have been 4 mitigation workshops. They're being called by ODOT. These were convened by ODOT and their consultant team. They were broken up into 4 meetings by area. They were fairly small in size, and they were what they called kind of the kickoff for the mitigation conversation. So it was the first peek that staff has had inside their methodology, inside the results of their analysis of which intersections are triggering, and our first opportunity really to ask targeted questions about those things. So we are still processing, so I'm not going to be able to give you a full account of all of that. But I will say just in general, probably not a surprise, we were disappointed by the very few intersections that actually triggered. We were disappointed by the fact that they are presenting something which is called proportionate share for many of those intersections. This infers that the toll project is not responsible for the full failure of the intersection, so the project will only be required to contribute a proportionate share to that mitigation. And I don't want to inflame anything. I think you guys are having a great productive meeting, so I'm not trying to do that, but I think this concept was quite shocking for us, and so we're doing a lot of research right now to understand that. I came from the development sector, and I'll tell you that's something that we use all the time for development, right? So I'm seeing a lot of those development style approaches being used and applied in this project, which is an interesting concept to think about applying that at this scale. So that's just my editorial commentary about what we've seen. I won't go too deep, but we are going to need to be having a lot more conversation about this. And so again, to my earlier point, we're going to have to be flexible so we can all get together and talk through this. And we really need to come together. I know you all already are, and you've been doing a great job, but just really see us at the staff level pulling together with the cities, with everyone to try and work together, share information, understand and process, communicate together as one county. So things are very, very real. Commissioner, is that for me?
Jamie, it kind of broke up there at the end. Not quite sure what happened, but I think we caught most of the update there. And I want to remind everybody, this is a quick update. This will be the meat of some conversation at the C4 Tolling Diversion Subcommittee meeting. And a lot more is to be learned about it. And so Commissioner Savas, I see that hand, but I did want to just offer that this will be a topic moving forward.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know, probably not everyone knows this, but our staff do, and some of you have heard this before, but it's important to point out that when we pointed out to ODOT that if the base year was to be 2015, that's when diversion was pretty hot. And if so, they're going to be basing proportionate share. My concern was going to be just what Jamie just revealed. If he actually bases on 2010 or 2005 diversion numbers or base year, that proportionate share for ODOT would be much higher. That is their responsibility. The diversion off the freeway is their responsibility prior to 2015. So it's going to render like City of West Lynn, who's going to spend, who needs 15, 12, 13, 14, $15 million for a pipe or for a water pipe just for this project, is going to be pretty reluctant to rebuild their intersections. Where's that revenue going to come from? From a small city like West Lynn? It's just unfair.
And I totally, Paul, I agree. Jamie, when we talk about the proportionate share, do we know what that percentage looks like yet? No, I think I knew that before I asked it, but I thought I'd get it out there anyways.
So that will be determined by the process, is what we've heard, because of course we've asked that same question. One of the really challenging things about this process is the revenue conversation, which I know we've all asked a lot of questions about, and I've heard you all have a lot of great questions and discussion about that as well. That is completely separate from NEPA. So what they're trying to do is just go through the format of NEPA and understand these pieces, which at some point they will determine what percentage that proportion is for each. And then they'll go forward and match that to some degree with the revenue conversation. So it's really hard to me to not have that information and try and work through these problems, but that's how it works apparently.
All right. Well, Jamie, thank you for that quick update, and that meeting coming up here will be highly fascinating for sure. So thank you. Trent, let's talk about the October 14th field trip.
Yes, thank you very much. And my apologies, please excuse me. I turned my camera off because it's been dry and I have a scab that opened up on my nose, and wouldn't this be the meeting that I'm trying to navigate that. So it's having a situation, but I can talk just fine. Yes, so on October 14 is the date selected by most to attend the field trip. I'm currently working on securing a bus to understand what the cost will be to take everybody down. We have about 8 to 10 people who have said yes, and some of those people said that they would like to bring others with them. So I think we have a relatively good group to go down and do this housing visit. We will also have our supportive housing services staff on that visit, which is why I would like to encourage you, if you are interested, please save the date. October 14th it'll be a whole day trip, 2 hours down to Eugene, 2 hours back at the end of the day. We'll figure out how to do lunch and the different site visits. People are in Eugene are holding their calendar, so it's a good opportunity. But we'll start getting the registration form out as early as next week is my goal, to be prepared for getting all that stuff put in place. And so that's the update here. Is do save the date if you are going to go. Let me know if you're interested. I mean, I know you've done the surveys and everything, but just to help me confirm those numbers, that would certainly help me. If you have a buddy coming with you, please let me know that you have more than one person. That's the type of stuff that's going to help me make sure we have the right size bus, the right size group, all those little pieces to make this an efficient tour for everybody. So moving forward, it looks really good. I think we have a good thing set up for us. Some good places to eat in Eugene too. So we'll find a good lunch spot, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Trent. Mr. Gronke.
Trent, what locations in Eugene are you planning to visit?
So I don't have the information directly in front of me, but there are a variety of sites down there hosted by two organizations that are in the Eugene area. One of them is sort of a community-based nonprofit agency that hosts several shelter facilities. And so we'll take a visit there to a couple of those. My understanding is that could take about an hour and a half to do 2 of those visits. There's another program hosted by, it's a local church, but they help manage and facilitate several villages that are in the Eugene area. Some of them are immediate transition shelters, which is actually what we modeled the Clackamas County Veterans Shelter after. Great program there. It's really interesting to kind of see where they put it and how they put it, and how they worked with the city of Eugene to make it work. It's managed by, it's supported by the church, but it's also got like a community agreement pact that folks sign when they go into it. So there's some self-management. I mean, there's that. We're going to visit this permanent transitional shelter housing with these tiny homes that are just several blocks down from that. So you'll be able to see a variety of housing types that these different programs in the city and the county have worked on together with a variety of clever land use codes and neighborhood communication, public engagement. The story of each of these is all relatively unique. It's not been done in any single way each time. And I think that's the value of a group like ours at C4, where we have, 16 cities total in Clackamas County. Some of them are really small. One of them is Portland with like 300 voting residences. So, it's a mix, but we have about 10 to 12 big cities that get active in a conversation like this. And every one of you who wants to engage in housing in Clackamas County, working with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County, we might be interested in doing different approaches in different locations. But we've heard the need through this group about going and trying and learning how to do things in a way that's going to work with each community. And I'm hoping, at least as your staff, that seeing these varieties that are offered down in Eugene are going to create some, good opportunities for conversation or creativity to help this broader conversation move forward for how we do housing in and around Clackamas County.
It sounds like, among others, you're going to visit there is one or more permanent housing developments in Eugene, am I not correct?
That's correct.
Actually charge rent for their residents.
Yes, but also it's proportional to what their income is based on their need. There's a variety of circumstances that they've worked together on, and many of those programs also have that supportive housing element that we get the benefit of now because of the supportive housing services measure. So there's some really good parallels to the work there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trent, for that. Moving into updates and other business, Mpac update.
I nominate you, Commissioner Savas. All I can think about is RTAC.
Boy, it seems like a year ago. I don't exactly recall where we left off at. I think there was some update on the RTP progress, but obviously not in depth. And Councillor Lewis, do you recall?
I at least found my notes.
Yeah, this is a fun game. Who remembers 7 a.m. in the morning 2 weeks ago? Counselor Heisey, your notes are going to be better than my recollection.
Wait, no, these are July's notes. I got nothing.
Okay, so no Mpac update for right now. That's okay.
Come on, you guys. You did RFFA trails, bond update stuff. You did high capacity transit, and
we discussed the ODOT amendment.
Bingo.
There we go. Thank you,
Teamwork.
Councillor Sherman, who was not at RTAC, so that's why he can remember those things.
All right, do you have an Mpac update?
Yes, I've got one for you. Mpac met on 24 August. There were 3 main briefings. The first one was from Metro on the River Terrace 2.0 urban growth boundary exchange process. Metro has looked at properties inside the urban growth boundary that have a share boundary with the Metro UGB and don't have a development plan associated with them. They came up with 11 different sites, 4 of which are in Clackamas County. 3 of those are right around Oregon City. 1 of them is north of Damascus. And as of 24 August, their plan was to meet with the Oregon City staff and the Clackamas County staff the day before Mpac. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Mpac meeting is next week, is it not? The next briefing was from Metro on the housing bond progress report. Very positive report there. Anybody who wants to see those slides, it's on the Metro website, Building for Belonging, Stories from Metro Housing Bond. And the last briefing was from Metro, once again, on the high capacity transit strategy update for the 2023 RTP. And Metro's looking at 3 specific questions to be answered from Mpac, and they want that response in November. And finally, their report showed a timeline for completing this between now and January to June of next year for their final report. And again, that's on the Metro website, that update timeline. And that's what I have for you from Mpac from last 24 August.
Great. Commissioner Shull, what was regarding the Metro bond? What was that slide presentation? It was what, building?
Yeah, okay, hold on a second. That was, you'll find that on the website. It's entitled Building for Belonging, Stories from Metro Housing Bond, or you can just send me an email, mshull@clackamas.us, and I'll email it to you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Mpac done. All right, Climate Action Plan Task Force update.
No big update. Same information as last time. It's still they're still in the middle of their public engagement work.
Okay. Wow, look at that. We've got caught up. We can do a quick other business round robin if anybody wants to share something quickly. Councilor Heisey.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you want to have monthly updates from the Regional Tolling Advisory Committee as part of the usual JPAC, Mpac dealio.
I would say yes.
Would you like to discuss it with the executive committee? Would you like an update now?
Well, do you have an update? If you got an update, let's go for it.
Sure. And I don't know if, I know Trent was out of the office. I did actually send my notes and the packet that we received to him in hopes that he would be able to share that out to C4, but I can just give you a verbal update as well. You know, it was, and of course, Commissioner Savas, feel free to jump in at any time. The first big chunk of the meeting was largely introductions and orientation. A lot of the people who are on this committee, which is 25 members, are people who have been involved in tolling conversations previously in the conversations that began in 2017. So there's a fair amount of expertise. Not all of them are familiar with what's going on in present time. So it is definitely crucial that we have Clackamas voices at the table. We had a presentation on the, let's see, from Project Context from Mandy, and we had a presentation on the OHP goal amendments, goal 6. We also had a presentation on the Equity Mobility Advisory Committee's work. So again, lots of orientation. We definitely were hearing that story that we were hearing from Chair Van Brocklin there as well of, you know, there's a $510 million shortfall annually in ODOT's maintenance budget. So the need for tolling is great because there's just not enough cash to go around. Our congestion is bad, yada, yada. when we were talking about the low income tolling rate, there was some interesting information about how unsuccessful participation rates are in low income tolling. LA has one that's around 10 to 15%. So more discussion needs to be had around how you actually get the benefit to the people who most need it. We did talk a bit about punitive measures. They may include maximum caps on fines. There won't be criminal penalties. This is in the report. It's not through the rulemaking, so they weren't willing to commit fully to this is what it's going to be like, but that's where they were sort of aiming toward. It's up to the OTC, this is worth noting, for future conversations, whether or not tolling is a 24/7 operation or if it only occurs during specific times of day. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else you want to add in there, Commissioner Savas, while I'm glancing through my notes?
Sure. Well, yeah, the last thing you mentioned there, I was a little bit surprised by that because and Mandy Putney accurately said that all their studies and discussions have been centered around 24/7 tolling, congestion pricing, whatever. So it was never assumed to be 12 hours a day. But from that discussion forward, a lot of people thought it was only 12 hours a day, which I didn't know, never heard that before. I was struck by that. So it just goes to show that there's a lot more information that's needed out there and people don't have the understanding. There are also a little bit of concerns about what the scope is. It was more of an organizational meeting. There were updates, and Kathy, you did a great job on sharing those. Thank you. So there are two things that stuck out with that. Number one is that it's chaired by the ODOT director, Chris Strickler, and there's also one ODOT member who's a voting member on there. We thought that was strange. So we have I think there's seems to be some agreement around the region, by the way, that's not really too kosher, and that the scope is so limited that we're kind of concerned that really what are we going to do? It's clear, they made it very clear that we're not going to set rates. That's going to be set by another committee who we don't know, and a statewide committee. And the other part about it, I think that was really problematic, at least from the Clackamas County Commission, is that there's a charter and they're asking for signatures on the charter from all the members, myself and Kathy and all of us included. However, in that charter, there's some bullet points there that are contrary to what the board's position is. So I've never seen anything like that where you sign away all the things you think that need to be worked on, and you sign them in as cast in stone that they're immovable, and then you don't really have a scope for the committee, but you move on. Usually, I've been part of Oregon Solutions and Oregon Consensus and a number of things. If you sign anything, it's at the end. It's not the beginning.
Interesting.
Anyhow, I'm going to injure my wrist tomorrow, so I can't sign. No, I'm just joking.
Interesting indeed. All right.
The only other things I'll add real quick now that I've had a chance to glance through, and thanks for that. That was helpful. The preview of revisions from ODOT that we received was a better distinguishing between the two types of tolling, the project or flat rate, and congestion pricing. And that the waterfall of funding will vary based on the type of tolling. We didn't get into any detail about that, but that was the preview. They're also looking at collating the different diversion policies so that they're more rightly ordered and it's clearer where they apply. And then they are also looking at increasing the specificity about the collaboration process and partners on tolling. And feedback from the committee overall said, there really needs to be greater clarity on these different funding buckets and which ones are getting filled. So a lot of pushback on that waterfall model. And then how to prioritize the funding dollars in the region is really coming up quite a lot. So we'll see, the part where our scope is very limited leaves a lot to question in terms of what we can accomplish at that table, but certainly there's discussions to be had in the future. So I'll see if Trent can't send those out. I'm happy to send those notes out to you guys as my own self. Thanks.
Thanks, Counselor Heisey. I think, yeah, if you wouldn't mind kicking that out, or maybe through Trent, whatever, I think we'd all like to see those and stay up on that as well and help back up the situation that you're in. So, Counselor Sherman, did I see your hand up earlier?
Hey, you did. Thanks for noticing. I was just gonna make a quick comment about high capacity transit, just because it was both at Mpac and JPAC. And it's, one of the key points I think about that is it's imperative for high capacity transit to be successful for any of the transportation things we're doing to work in this region. And one of the things I was a little bit concerned about in those presentations was, they make a really specific point of saying high capacity transit is not last mile. It's not small micro shuttles. It's not all the flexible things that make it work. It's the big double buses and the big double trains and like the West train. And they're really looking at increasing capacity, not necessarily frequency, and not necessarily the capillaries versus the arteries. And that I'm not sure, it doesn't make common sense to me, because to build ridership, you need to have the capillaries, you need to have the pieces, the small microbuses that get people riding on a regular basis to get the capacity up to actually have those big double buses. Otherwise, it's just big empty double buses running down the arterials. So, and that was an answer, or that was something they really didn't have a good answer for. And the other is, they're reducing, TriMet is reducing bus lines. They're reducing the number of people doing this. So help me, I don't understand how those mesh. So my point being, as we move forward and as we get more information on that, I just really want us to kind of think about how those pieces fit together in relation to the bigger picture, because really transit is the potential solution for all the things we're talking about, but none of this works if that's not robust enough. So did I make it to 8:30? I tried to fill that last, I've got another minute. So anyway, I don't know what you guys have going on the rest of the week, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Trent.
Yeah, it's just my last comment for everybody. Please check your calendars for those of you who attend C4 Metro Subcommittee meeting. One fun nuance of that particular group is they meet the day before JPAC, not specifically on the third Wednesday. They meet the day before JPAC. And because the month starts on a Thursday, the third Thursday where JPAC is meets right after the second Wednesday. So September 14th is when the C4 Metro Subcommittee will meet the day before JPAC. Not the third Wednesday, but the second Wednesday, because the month starts on a Thursday. It's a weird nuance about all this, but I don't want y'all to miss the meeting. This happens again in December, and then it doesn't happen again for 12 months.
Thank you, Trent. Mr. Myers, you're officially taking us over.
All right, we haven't approved minutes, so I'd move to have them approved.
Did I not do that?
Yeah, we
No.
did. We did it. Yeah, we did.
Did we do it?
Yep.
Yeah, then I withdraw, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Whew. I know I sometimes can be off. I thought I was on point. I wanted to be, make sure that we were impressive for Chair Van Brockman tonight, so. All right, that's it. That's all she wrote. Motion to adjourn? It's moved.
So moved.
And seconded. Perfect. Good night, C4. Thank you all for the hard work tonight. See everybody soon.